Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive into today's absolute fire of a deck tech, I want to remind you to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We're building a community of combo lovers and deck tech enthusiasts, and your support helps us keep bringing you these deep dives. Also, if you're loving the content, check out our brand new merch shop, where we've got some sick shirts and sweaters that'll let you rep your love for Magic at the commander table. Links in the description below. Now let's talk about the most terrifying commander to come out of the Airbender set. Lord Azula is here, and she's about to set the format ablaze. For just 4 mana in Grixis colors, we get a 4/4 legendary human noble with not 1, but 2 absolutely game-warping abilities. First up, Firebending 2. Every time Azula attacks, we add 2 red mana that lasts until the end of combat. That's right, we're getting a ritual effect stapled to our commander every single combat. But here's where it gets absolutely nuclear. Whenever you cast a spell while Lord Azula is attacking, you copy that spell and may choose new targets for the copy. Did you catch that? Any spell. Not just instants and sorceries. We're talking about copying everything we cast during combat, and those permanent copies become tokens. This is a Storm deck, a token deck, a Spellslinger deck, and a combo deck all rolled into one terrifying package. Azula doesn't just bend fire, she bends the entire game to her will. Let's start with what I'm calling our Magecraft Engines package, because this deck is all about slinging spells during combat and reaping massive rewards. First up is Archmage Emeritus, and this card is absolutely disgusting in this list. Every time we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, we draw a card. Remember, Azula copies every spell we cast while she's attacking, which means every instant or sorcery we cast in combat draws us 2 cards minimum. We're talking about turning every cantrip into a double ancestral recall. Next, we have Storm-Kiln Artist, and this dwarf is about to fund our entire game plan. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, we create a treasure token. Again, with Azula's ability, that's 2 treasures per spell during combat. We're not just storming off, we're also ramping exponentially with every spell we resolve. And finally, Ashling Flame Dancer takes this strategy to the absolute stratosphere. She has 3 Magecraft triggers that get progressively more powerful. First cast or copy loots us a card, second one deals 2 damage to each opponent and their creatures, and the third time adds 4 red mana. Oh, and she also lets us keep our unspent red mana as steps and phases end, which means all that Firebending mana can roll over into our second main phase for even more shenanigans. These 3 creatures turn our combat phase into the most explosive turn cycle you've ever seen. Now we're taking our Magecraft strategy and doubling down with what I call our monomultiplication package. Harmonic Prodigy is one of the most backbreaking cards in this entire list. This 1-drop wizard has prowess, so it gets bigger with every non-creature spell, but the real magic is in that second line of text. If an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Let that sink in. Archmage Emeritus, now drawing 2 cards per cast or copy. Storm-Kiln Artist, 2 treasures instead of 1. Ashling's Magecraft, happening twice. This card literally doubles the value of every single Magecraft trigger in our deck, and since we're already copying spells with Azula, we're talking about exponential value generation. Next up is Birgi, God of Storytelling, and oh my goodness, this card is perfect for Azula. Whenever we cast a spell, we add 1 red mana that doesn't empty as steps and phases end. Think about what this means. Cast a cantrip during combat with Azula. That spell gets copied. We add 2 red mana from Birgi, and that mana sticks around. Cast 3 spells. That's 6 red mana. Cast 10 spells. That's 20 red mana for our next turn. This god turns our spell velocity into exponential mana generation. And rounding out this package is Electro, Assaulting Battery. Every time we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we add 1 red mana, and we don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. Just like Birgi and Ashling, this creates a mana snowball effect where casting more spells gives us more mana to cast even more spells. These 3 cards ensure we never run out of gas. While we're generating mana and drawing cards, we also need to pressure our opponents and close out games. That's where our token army generators come in. Young Pyromancer is a Spellslinger classic that creates a 1/1 red elemental token whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell. With Azula copying every spell we cast during combat, that means every cantrip, every ritual, every piece of interaction is creating 2 elementals minimum. Cast 5 spells in a single combat. That's 10 1/1s flooding the board. These tokens add up fast and become a legitimate win condition through pure aggro damage. Talrand, Sky Summoner, does the same thing but creates 2/2 Blue Drake tokens with flying. Flying is huge in Commander because it gets around most ground-based defenses, and these drakes quickly become a lethal flying army. Again, every instant or sorcery we cast during combat makes 2 drakes thanks to Azula's copy. So we're building an evasive air force while we storm off. And then there's Guttersnipe, the classic burn enabler. This goblin deals 2 damage to each opponent whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell. In a 4-player game, that's 6 damage per spell when we account for Azula's copy. Cast 5 spells in combat, that's 30 damage split across all opponents. This card turns our spell velocity into direct face damage and quickly becomes an archenemy magnet because of how much reach it provides. These 3 creatures ensure that every spell we cast is advancing our board state and pressuring life totals. We also need cards that provide both threats and utility, which is where our Swiss Army knife creatures come in. Goldspan Dragon is an absolute house in this deck. It's a 4/4 flyer with haste, so it comes down and immediately starts attacking. But the real value is that whenever Goldspan attacks, OR becomes the target of a spell. We create a treasure token, and all our treasures tap for 2 mana instead of 1. This is insane. Every treasure token from Storm-Kiln Artist now taps for 2 mana, which means we're doubling our treasure value, and if someone tries to interact with Goldspan, we get a treasure token as a consolation prize. This dragon ramps us, threatens opponents, and doubles our treasure efficiency all at once. Next up is Haughty Djinn, our cost reducer and scaling threat. This Djinn has flying and power equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in our graveyard, and it makes all our instant and sorcery spells cost 1 generic mana less to cast. In a deck that's slinging 30 plus instants and sorceries, Haughty Djinn is easily a 10/04 or bigger flyer by the mid-game, and the cost reduction means we're casting more spells per turn. More spells means more copies, more Magecraft triggers, and more value. And finally, Nightscape Familiar is the ultimate cost reducer for Grixis Spellslinging. This zombie makes all our blue and red spells cost 1 less to cast. That's nearly every instant and sorcery in our deck. Turning 2 mana counterspells into 1 mana counterspells, and 3 mana card draw into 2 mana card draw adds up incredibly fast. This creature might seem unassuming, but it's one of the best enablers in the entire list. We've also included some utility creatures that give us flexibility and protection. Dualcaster Mage is a classic combo piece that has flash and copies target instant or sorcery spell when it enters the battlefield. This is removal, counterspell, or combo enabler depending on what we need. If someone casts a big spell, we can flash in Dualcaster to copy it for ourselves. If we cast this during combat with Azula attacking, we create a token copy of Dualcaster Mage that also copies a spell, giving us incredible value. High Fae Trickster is our enabler for casting spells at instant speed. This fairy has flash itself and gives all our spells flash, which means we can hold up mana, threaten interaction, and then cast our creatures or sorceries during combat on our turn. This card dramatically increases our deck's flexibility and lets us play a true control game until we're ready to go off. And Malevolent Hermit is a 2-for-1 that gives us both a counterspell and a protection piece. On the front side, it's a creature that can sacrifice itself to counter a non-creature spell, protecting our key permanents or stopping a game-ending spell. Then from our graveyard, we can disturb it for 3 mana to bring it back as Benevolent Geist, a flying spirit that makes all our non-creature spells uncounterable. This is exactly the kind of protection we need when we're going for a big storm turn. Now let's talk about the artifacts that take this deck from good to busted. Twinning Staff is the single most important artifact in this entire list. This 4-mana artifact says that whenever we copy a spell, we create an additional copy of that spell instead. With Azula attacking, that means every spell we cast gets copied twice instead of once. Cast Lightning Bolt, that's 3 bolts. Cast Faithless Looting, that's 3 lootings. Cast a creature, that's 3 creatures entering the battlefield. This artifact turns our already explosive commander into something that wins games in a single combat phase. Twinning Staff is the card that makes opponents scoop when it hits the battlefield because they know what's coming. Next up is Isochron Scepter, one of the most powerful artifacts ever printed for instant-based strategies. We can imprint any instant with mana value 2 or less under this scepter, and then for 2 mana we can create a copy of that spell. And here's where it gets nuclear. If we activate Isochron Scepter during combat while Azula is attacking, we're copying the spell twice, once from the scepter and once from Azula. Imagine imprinting Lightning Bolt, Flare of Duplication, or Cyclonic Rift under this thing. We're getting 3 copies of our best instant every single turn. This is repeatable value that scales exponentially with our commander. And rounding out our artifacts is Sensei's Divining Top, the card selection king. For 1 mana, we can draw a card and put top on top of our library, which is essentially pay 1 mana, draw a card. And this lets us dig through our deck, find our best spells, and set up explosive turns. Top also triggers Haughty Djinn by putting instants and sorceries in our graveyard, feeds into card draw synergies, and gives us incredible consistency. Every blue deck needs card draw engines, and we've included the absolute best enchantments for generating card advantage. Rhystic Study is the premier card draw enchantment in all of Commander. For just 3 mana, we draw a card whenever an opponent casts a spell, unless they pay 1 extra mana. In a multiplayer game, this card draws us 5, 10, 15 cards per game cycle. Opponents are constantly forced to choose between paying the tax and letting us draw, and either way we're profiting. This enchantment turns our opponent's spells into card advantage for us, and quickly buries them in card disadvantage. Next is Mystic Remora, the early game draw engine. For just 2 mana, we draw a card whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell unless they pay 4 mana. In the early game, when people are casting Signets, Land Ramp, and Tutors, this enchantment draws us tons of cards for minimal investment. We can pay the cumulative upkeep if we want to keep it around, or we can let it go once it's served its purpose. Either way, Mystic Remora generates absurd value in the first 5 turns of the game. And finally, Shark Typhoon is both a threat and a card draw engine. We can cycle it to create a flying shark token with power and toughness equal to the mana we spent, or we can cast it as an enchantment that makes a shark token whenever we cast a non-creature spell. With Azula copying all our spells during combat, we're creating 2 sharks per spell, and these flying beaters add up fast. Shark Typhoon gives us both inevitability and the ability to make instant speed threats that opponents can't interact with easily. We've also included some truly spicy cards that take advantage of our mana doesn't empty theme and our spell copy strategy. Braid of Fire is an enchantment that people often overlook, but in this deck it's absolutely backbreaking. During our upkeep, we add an age counter to Braid of Fire and then add red mana equal to the number of age counters on it. That mana doesn't empty as steps and phases end. This means on turn 3 we add 1 red, turn 4 2 red, turn 5 3 red, turn 6 4 red. And because of Ashling, Electro, and Birgi, that mana sticks around through our entire turn. By turn 8 or 9, we're adding 8 red mana during our upkeep that we can use to storm off during combat. Braid of Fire is a slow burn engine that snowballs into explosive turns. Professor Onyx is our planeswalker payoff for all this spell slinging. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life, and we gain 2 life. With Azula copying every spell during combat, that's 4 life swing per spell we cast. Cast 5 spells in a combat? That's a 20 life swing. Professor Onyx provides incredible reach and turns our spell velocity into direct damage while also giving us card advantage through her plus ability. And Ral, Storm Conduit, is similar. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Ral deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Again, with Azula, that's 2 damage per spell. But Ral's real power is his -2 ability that lets us copy the next instant or sorcery spell we cast this turn. Combine that with Azula and Twinning Staff, and we're copying a single spell 4 times. That's the kind of value that wins games. Now let's talk about the rituals that fuel our explosive turns. Our ritual suite is what allows us to cast 10 spells in a single combat and truly storm off. Jeska's Will is one of the most powerful rituals ever printed. For just 3 mana, we either add red mana equal to the number of cards in an opponent's hand, or we exile the top 3 cards of our library and may play them this turn. In a typical commander game, opponents have 5 to 7 cards in hand, which means Jeska's Will adds 5 to 7 red mana, and if we cast this during combat with Azula attacking, we're adding that mana twice and exiling 6 cards to play. This card is an absolute bomb that enables game-ending turns. Mana Geyser is similarly explosive, adding red mana equal to the number of tap lands our opponents control. In a 4-player game during someone's end step, we're easily looking at 10 to 20 tap lands across the table, which means Mana Geyser adds 10 to 20 red mana. Cast this during combat with Azula, and we're adding 40 red mana. That's enough to cast our entire hand and win the game on the spot. And even Dark Ritual, the classic 1 mana ritual that adds 3 black mana, becomes absurd when copied. Cast this during combat, and we're adding 6 black mana total from a 1 mana investment. These rituals turn our combat phase into a mana printing machine that lets us resolve every spell in our hand. Card draw is crucial for maintaining our engine, which is why we've included some of the best draw spells in Magic's history. Wheel of Fortune is the premier draw 7 in red, and it's absolutely backbreaking in this deck. For just 3 mana, each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards. Cast this during combat with Azula attacking, and we're essentially drawing 14 cards while forcing opponents to discard twice. This refills our hand, fuels our graveyard for Haughty Djinn, and gives us all the resources we need to win. Faithless Looting is a cantrip that draws us 2 cards and makes us discard 2 cards for just 1 red mana. With Flashback, we can cast it again from our graveyard, and with Azula copying it, we're drawing 4 cards and discarding 4 cards from a single mana investment. This fills our graveyard for recursion, digs us toward our best spells, and triggers all our Magecraft effects. And Frantic Search is one of the most broken cards in the deck. For 3 mana, we draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and untap up to 3 lands. Cast this during combat with Azula attacking, we're essentially drawing 4 cards, discarding 4 cards, and untapping 6 lands, which means Frantic Search is mana neutral or even mana positive. This card digs through our deck while generating mana, and it's one of the key enablers for going infinite with our storm turns. Every deck needs interaction, and we've included the most efficient removal and board wipes available in Grixis colors. Cyclonic Rift is widely regarded as the best board wipe in Commander. For 7 mana at instant speed, we overload this to bounce every non-land permanent our opponents control back to their hands. This is a one-sided board wipe that leaves our board intact while completely dismantling our opponents. And because it's at instant speed, we can cast it during combat with Azula attacking to create a token copy that bounces everything AGN. Cyclonic Rift is the card that ends games and clears the path for a lethal attack. Toxic Deluge is our black board wipe that deals X damage to each creature for just 3 mana. We pay X life, and each creature gets -X until end of turn. This hits indestructible creatures, regenerators, and everything in between. In a format where our life total starts at 40, paying 10 life to wipe the entire board is completely reasonable, and Toxic Deluge often resolves when other board wipes get countered because of how efficiently costed it is. And Lightning Bolt is the gold standard of efficient removal. 1 red mana for 3 damage to any target means we're killing small creatures, finishing off planeswalkers, or dealing direct damage to opponents. Cast this during combat with Azula, and we're dealing 6 damage total, which can take out 2 creatures or finish off a wounded opponent. These interaction spells keep us alive while we assemble our engine. We've also included additional copy effects that synergize perfectly with Azula's ability to create exponential value. Flare of Duplication is a fork variant that lets us either pay 3 mana or sacrifice a non-token red creature to copy target instant or sorcery spell. The flexibility here is huge. We can use this as a ritual by sacrificing a young Pyromancer token to copy a big spell, or we can pay the mana cost when we have it. Cast this during combat with Azula attacking, and we're copying our target spell twice, once from Flare and once from Azula. This turns 1 spell into 3 copies, which is exactly the kind of scaling we need. Increasing Vengeance is similar, but even better from the graveyard. For 2 red mana, we copy target instant or sorcery spell, but if we flashback this from our graveyard for 5 mana, we copy that spell twice instead. With Azula attacking, that means we can flashback Increasing Vengeance to copy a spell 4 times total, twice from the flashback, and twice from Azula copying the flashback spell. This is how we turn a single lightning bolt into 5 lightning bolts. And finally, Twin Flame creates token copies of our creatures with haste. We can target multiple creatures using Strive, but even targeting just 1 creature during combat with Azula means we're making 2 token copies of our best creature. Copy Storm-Kiln, Artist twice. Now every spell makes 4 treasures instead of 2. Copy Guttersnipe twice. Now every spell deals 6 damage to each opponent. Twin Flame scales exponentially with our token generators. To find our best spells and assemble our combos, we need tutors, and we've included some of the most powerful ones available. Firemind's Foresight is a tutor package in 1 card. For 7 mana at instant speed, we search our library for an instant with mana value 3, an instant with mana value 2, and an instant with mana value 1, then put them all into our hand. This lets us construct a combo on the spot or grab our best interaction and rituals. A typical Firemind's Foresight package might be Lightning Bolt for removal, Desperate Ritual for mana, and Flare of Duplication to copy our best spell. Cast this during combat with Azula, and we're tutoring for 6 instants total, which is enough to assemble a game-ending combo on the spot. Vampiric Tutor is the premier black tutor, letting us search our library for any card and put it on top of our library for just 1 black mana at instant speed. This finds us Cyclonic Rift, Jeska's Will, or whatever we need to win the game. It's pure consistency. And Invoke Calamity is recursion and combo enabler rolled into 1. For 5 red mana at instant speed, we cast up to 2 instant or sorcery spells with total mana value 6 or less from our graveyard or hand for free, then exile Invoke Calamity. We can cast Jeska's Will and Mana Geyser for free, generating absurd amounts of mana, or we can cast Lightning Bolt and Cyclonic Rift to clear the board and deal damage. This card is a Swiss Army knife that ends games. Let's talk about the mana base that makes this 3-color deck run smoothly. In Grixis, fixing is crucial, and our land base ensures we can cast our spells on curve. Command Tower is the quintessential commander land, tapping for any color in our commander's identity. In a 3-color deck, this is essentially a perfect land that always produces the exact mana we need. It comes in untapped, has no downside, and is an auto-include in every single commander deck. The shock lands, Steam Vents, Watery Grave, and Blood Crypt, are our premier dual lands that come in untapped for 2 life, or tapped for free. These lands have basic land types, which makes them searchable with fetch lands and compatible with our check lands. In a format where our life total starts at 40, 2 life is completely negligible, when it means we can cast our spells on curve. These shock lands give us perfect color fixing with minimal downside, and ensure we're never color screwed in the early game. Having untapped dual lands that produce 2 colors is essential for a 3-color deck that wants to curve out efficiently. Beyond our perfect fixing, we have check lands and battle lands to round out our mana base. Sulphur Falls is our blue-red check land that enters untapped if we control an island or a mountain. With our basic lands and dual-type lands like Sunken Hollow, we're very likely to have one of these land types on the battlefield, which means Sulphur Falls almost always enters untapped. This gives us access to blue and red mana with minimal downside, and since it checks for land types rather than basic lands specifically, it works beautifully with our dual-typed lands. Dragonskull Summit is our black-red check land with the same functionality, entering untapped if we control a swamp or a mountain. This fixes our red and black mana perfectly and ensures we can cast our removal spells and black rituals on curve. And Sunken Hollow is our blue-black battle land that enters untapped if we control 2 or more basic lands. This typically enters untapped by turn 3 or 4, giving us perfect blue-black fixing for the mid and late game. Battle lands are fantastic because they have basic land types, which means they synergize with our check lands. Sulphur Falls checks for islands, and Sunken Hollow is an island, so they enable each other beautifully. We also have some specialty utility lands that provide additional value beyond just mana fixing. Mystic Sanctuary is an island that enters tapped unless we control 3 or more other islands. When it enters the battlefield, if we control 3 or more islands, we can put target instant or sorcery card from our graveyard on top of our library. This is recursion stapled to a land, which means we can get back our Jeska's Will, our Cyclonic Rift, or our best ritual whenever we need it. Mystic Sanctuary turns our late game land drops into pure value. Otawara Soaring City is a legendary island that can channel for 3 mana to return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This is instant speed interaction stapled to a land, which means we're never flooding out. If we draw Otawara in the late game, we can channel it to bounce an opponent's best permanent and never miss a beat. And Reliquary Tower lets us have no maximum hand size, which is crucial in a deck that draws 10 to 15 cards in a single turn. With Archmage, Emeritus, Rhystic Study, and Wheel of Fortune effects, we're often drawing way more cards than we can cast, and Reliquary Tower ensures we never have to discard to hand size. These utility lands give us incredible flexibility. And there you have it, everyone. Lord Azula is an absolute monster of a commander that combines spell slinging, token generation, storm, and Grixis control into one terrifying package. This deck does everything. It generates absurd amounts of mana with Firebending, Birgi, and rituals. It copies every single spell we cast during combat. It draws tons of cards with our Magecraft engines and enchantments. And it can win through combat damage with tokens, direct damage from Guttersnipe and Professor Onyx, or overwhelming card advantage. The key to piloting this deck is understanding when to go all in on a combat storm turn, and when to hold back and build resources. Protect Azula at all costs with Swiftfoot boots and counterspells. Use your interaction wisely, and always be setting up for that one explosive turn where you cast 10 spells, copy them all, and generate enough value to win on the spot. The primary weakness of this deck is that it's incredibly commander dependent. If Azula gets removed multiple times, the commander tax gets prohibitively expensive, and our game plan falls apart. That's why protection and counter spells are so crucial. Board wipes can also hurt us because we rely on creatures for our Magecraft triggers, but with our card draw and rituals, we can often rebuild quickly. This deck is pure fun, pure power, and pure chaos. It's the kind of deck that makes people say, wait, you copied how many spells? What do you think of Firelord Azula? Do you have any spicy tech or combos we missed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, if you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another deck tech. We're releasing new content regularly, and your support helps us keep doing what we love. Also, don't forget to check out our brand new merch shop. We've got awesome shirts and sweaters that'll make you the coolest person at your local game store. Links are in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and may your firebending always generate the perfect amount of mana. Until next time, keep comboing, keep casting, and keep being awesome.